We didn't get very far.
Hello, whoever may be here.
We had a bit of a technical difficulty there and went through about a couple minutes of our discussion without a microphone on.
Yeah. So
Sorry about that.
there's probably no one live, but if there is, thank you for being here. So
For listening to like 15 minutes of silence.
we will just,
I love John Cage.
I guess we'll start over.
Yeah, we didn't get very far anyways.
Yeah. And this will be available for those that want to listen later.
So, we started out, this whole topic is about relationships and particularly love languages. And as always, we want to think about our definitions. So, to go back again, it feels weird doing this again, but it's fine. What is love then?
It is beyond what human definitions can define.
Yes.
At least the broad term of love is.
I would certainly agree. I found that Merriam-Webster had at least 9 definitions for the noun love, let alone the verb form and all the different types that you can use it in. Forget metaphorical love. And then Oxford had like a 15-sentence paragraph that said nothing. So I basically drew this to mean that love is a very complex thing to discern an objective meaning to it. A little bit of foreshadowing there. But the best definition I could find of it was, funnily enough, the Google definition, which I wouldn't normally use to cite things. But they wrote it as an intense feeling of deep affection.
I think that is general enough that it can apply to most of the more specific definitions that are needed to really dissect this issue. So now we must turn to the ancient Greeks, who actually had 8 categories that they sort of broke love up into. The first of which we're going to start with, is agape love, which would be defined as unconditional love, and it really, as far as I can tell, can only really be achieved by God himself, a deity.
Yeah, if you think about the word unconditional, the best way to think about that is the whole sacrifice of Christ himself.
Yeah.
In that he asked for nothing in return, but gave his entire self and his entire life that he had to give.
Absolutely. Because even in a situation where someone is doing something, like they say they're being selfless, or making sacrifices for, say, a spouse or a child, there's still things that are in it for them. Mm-hmm. Like with a child, you want the love of your child for the rest of your life. With a spouse, you want to spend your life with that person.
Yeah, a father or mother may give immense amounts of unconditional
Absolutely.
things to them, but yet they will still expect
Yes.
that bond to be there.
Mm-hmm.
When, to use the biblical examples, there isn't that expectation, at least in Newer Testament stuff.
So the next one, completely different here.
Very, very different.
Eros, or romantic love.
Passionate love. Sensual.
Sensual.
Why do you guys? You guys missed Luke's intro last when we first started, which was an incredibly uncomfortable 5 seconds of my life, which I will never get back. And yet here we are. We will not relive that.
I have to make up for it now.
No. I'm gonna leave the room if you do that.
So I think this one goes without much explanation. Admittedly, it's the easiest perhaps to understand, but one of the hardest, to put into words without sounding creepy.
Good luck.
And this is what you would typically associate with high school relationships that don't go anywhere, like hookups, things like that.
Yeah, and to be clear, the word passionate, if you look at the actual definition, it really implies sexual intention to it. So don't go around saying you're passionate about the things you do, because that people who knows what that means, it makes it a little different to think about. But that's exactly what eros is. It's this passionate love, sensual, and it's a desire for longing. Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Which is not a love story, which we might do sometime.
That's a good point.
It's a 3-day relationship between a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old that caused 6 deaths, including both of the children. Anyways, jumping to the third form of now
love.
this
Episode 5.
plug.
The third form of Greek love was known as philia, or this could be described as camaraderie, dispassionate affection, loyalty, things like that.
Yeah, and there's a wonderful story. Our high school English teacher from last year, his class was, we've talked about it before, his class was a very informative class, not so much in content as it was in just lessons about life, and one of the lectures he did was about what is love and love languages, which to a room of 17-year-old high schoolers, and it makes much sense.
Yeah, as if we were really absorbing a whole lot of that.
Right. I told Luke, I basically just wrote everything down. I'm going to read it when I'm 20 and maybe get it then, if that.
And during that class, apparently he gave the same or similar lecture every year. And in one of the earlier years, after he had described this kind of love to the class, one of the dudes looked over at his buddy, put his hand on his shoulder,
big
and
hefty
said,
football boys.
Yeah, football guys, and he's like, "I feel you, bro."
This then continued to escalate into lunch, at which one of them did it at a lunch table to a random person who had not heard this lecture, and resulted in the other, not assaulting but punching the former, on the pretense of he said he philias me, which was true. So so the best way of thinking about filial love is that not brotherly love, but brotherly in the boys kind of love. In that it's the friends around you and the loyalty you build to them, particularly in a military with the camaraderie kind of thing.
The simplest way to think about this is just love you have for your friends, and it was, I guess, philosophized by Plato, and that's why you'll sometimes hear it referred to as platonic love.
So go home and tell your friends that you philia them, or don't.
Don't.
That's
don't.
probably not a good idea.
You don't want to get assaulted.
Anyways,
the next one I have. Oh, I don't want to try and pronounce that. Would you like to take a stab at that?
You know I didn't take Latin. Philatia? Yeah, Philatia, I think it is.
And this one they described as self-love, which I have my whole host of opinions on this one and how it has absolutely infected our modern society and is the single greatest obstacle towards introspection.
I am not familiar with this one. Please enlighten me. I only know the 4 that I learned in that class. I believe you have 4 more for me.
Yeah, I have a few more from the interwebs. And this one is self-love, and I think I'll take this opportunity to go off on a tangent. I think a lot of people interpret self-love as merely pampering yourself, treating yourself, feeding your own addictions rather than addressing them.
Yeah, and that ties back to, we've had the discussion many times here about the instantaneous growth and the long-term growth, and I think that's where that difference is in what you mean by self-love, because self-love can be I am feeling sad right now, so I'm going to fix this. That's caring for myself. I want to be a better person 30 years from now, so I'm going to work towards that. That's also self-love.
Yes, and I would argue that is the proper way to go about self-love.
I would agree wholly.
It's the same concept, and for this I kind of draw on the psychologist Jordan Peterson and his book 12 Rules for Life, one of which is treat yourself as if you were a friend you were taking care of.
Yeah.
And this is where that kind of love would come in. If you wouldn't recommend that a friend eat junk food all day and sit in front of their TV and binge watch a show, then doing that for yourself is not self-love. That's self-harm.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Very good example.
And I think some people, we may think that we like, it's this amazing virtuous thing to like love yourself and do all these things for yourself, but if you're not becoming a better person in the process, then you're really only doing harm for yourself, and in fact you're valuing yourself less than other people that you would love.
Absolutely. Short-term gain only diminishes what you can be. We've talked numerous times about potential, and just a short-term thing wastes that opportunity for that potential, and you really don't have a chance to get it back.
So I guess the takeaway from this is do self-love the right way. And I would throw out the term self-love and replace it with introspection.
Watch episode 1, plug it. Watch it.
That's just me. We should probably the whole podcast every episode kind of ties back to that. We could revisit that at some point.
We probably will have to, but I don't want to listen to my voice, so that'll be a good day. And if you haven't already, just as a kind of derailment here, make sure you like and subscribe to keep track of whenever our episodes come out, especially when that next one comes out. Do you need me to pronounce it?
Yes, that's why.
You think I'm better at this. I'm not. I think it's Storge.
Storge?
Storge?
Storage?
I wrote storage on mine. I think it's Storge.
Anyone who's interested in the spellings of these can look them up.
And if you know how to pronounce them, please help.
Yes.
We're sinking quickly.
So, this is family love, essentially, right?
That's what it says?
Yeah.
I should look at it. Yeah, I have affection and family love. So, again, dispassionate, but also affectionate, rather, which is just liking someone as a personality, as opposed to as not necessarily an object, but in a sensual way.
And this, I think, I think a lot of people conflate with agape love, unconditional love, in that a mother will love a child even before she's seen the child. You know,
I know what you mean. I don't see how they connect there.
Like how a mother will love their children unconditionally.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Okay.
Even though it's really not unconditional.
Yeah, even that mother who's absolutely unconditional and would do anything for their children is still expecting usually their children's respect, or at least them to like them in some form.
And
as opposed
if
to...
you are... I would argue of course, I know nothing about parenting, but if someone is a parent and they will love their child no matter what, I would argue that's not the best way to go about it, because you have to have standards for that.
Okay, this is fun.
Yeah. Getting a little controversial.
So, okay. I would disagree.
Okay.
But to clarify, in that I would say a parent should unconditionally or love their children regardless of what they are or do, for the most part, unless there's like an extremely extraneous consequence, like they're a terrorist, at which you probably don't want to. But while I think they should maintain that trying to love them no matter what, I would rather say their trust and respect isn't always guaranteed,
Okay.
and their control isn't always relieved. So a mother and father should always love their children and think of them favorably, but they don't always have to like them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So okay, so say a kid, his dad finds out that his kid is an absolute bully at school. He should still love his kid because he's his kid and deserves to have that, and
Certainly.
and has the opportunity to get it back. But the parent doesn't have to be like, this is okay.
I was more notioning towards adult children, in that once they have agency over their life and they're fully developed, and maybe it is a difference of just definition, in that they should always love them but not respect them, possibly. So I guess the question I would have then is, should it go the other way?
Should the children always love the parent?
Yes.
They should expect to. If their parent is providing with that, they should do it in return. Because humans are not unconditional things, and if someone is providing their absolute unconditional love to you and trying to be, dare I say, godlike, it's kind of insulting to say no and to disrespect that to them.
Okay. Because for this, if you look at whichever commandment it is of the 10.
Don't make me try and recite them. I'm like running them down in my head.
Adultery, John.
Throwback Tuesday.
Whichever, the honor thy father and thy mother, it does not say love father and mother. And I think honor is intentionally meant to mean something different.
Honor is, yes, in that case, honor means listen to and follow the instructions of your parents instead of rebelling against them and disturbing the household. Particularly in the time when the Bible's books were written, the family was much more of a integral unit to life.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, they were basically all they had.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a couple neighbors, but most of those people were confined to just their family if they didn't live in a city, which even those were pretty small. So in that case, it's like the parent should be able to expect that their children listen to them and do what they say. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they should also offer that kind of love to them for doing so and demonstrating that they are in that time period good listeners to their faith and such, and that they're demonstrating good qualities of a human being, really.
Interesting little disagreement there.
That was fun.
Yeah.
I like it. See, folks, you can disagree and still be okay.
Politely and informatively.
I still feel you, Luke.
Oh, I totally feel you,
Yeah, okay.
bro.
You always say it weird.
What other way is there to say it?
That's true. What word's next? Which one can't we pronounce?
Pragma? Question mark?
Sure.
Yeah. This is, again, our teacher didn't go over this. This is another one I found online. And it's described as enduring love or long-term love. And this, the best example I can give is a couple on their 60th wedding anniversary that's been together
For 60 years.
Yeah.
Actually, it was just my parents' I think 30th, I want to say, or 24th, one of those.
But it's a romantic love that lasts, I suppose.
So it's romantic, it doesn't apply to like the other forms? He's reading. It's just you and me now.
I'm going back through my notes.
Your notes, air quotes. Because
I believe it kind of involves like, and this could be completely off from what the Greeks thought, but I'll just go for it myself. I believe this form of love requires work. Like the willingness to really expend a lot of effort in order to give your life to another person. And that's why I think it would primarily apply to spousal relationships.
That makes sense. Yeah, because most of the other forms we looked at don't have to, but can occur in like instantaneously. Eros is the passionate one, which it's called a one night stand. Storge is that family love, which can just be right at birth. Agape can be that one sacrifice. Philia can be that one time your friends are loyal to you. But then this one is much more about that long term.
Mm-hmm.
I want to use the word loyalty, although that's already been used at Philia, in that it's like they can trust you after that long period and you still love them for that.
And one of the things I read about that is very important, that's different from the other ones, is that this has to be mutual. There's no way for this one to only go one way. It has to. Other forms, particularly like the family one, could only go one way.
Mm-hmm.
But this one only works if two people fully invest in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a teenager in high school who's super rebellious can not love their father, but their father can still love them without that being the issue. Other issues are there, but that's not the core issue. When compared to like two spouses married together for 20 years, one of them loves it and the other wants a divorce. That's really gonna like strain that relationship, and it won't work very well, and usually results in a divorce. And the reason we hear so many stories of people being like forced to stay in a marriage, forced meaning exactly what you think it means, is because it's the only way you can maintain that.
Think that covers that one?
I think so. I didn't know that one. Thank you.
The seventh, the penultimate.
Oh, good word.
Form of love is called ludus. Ludus.
I think it's ludus.
Ludus, probably.
Or ludus, maybe.
Ludus. This one is described as playful love, but I think it would be best described as crackhead energy love.
That's awesome.
In that, well, actually, now that I'm re-looking at the definition, maybe not.
Oh, you got my hopes up, Luke. So, what is it defined there?
It's defined as like it uses the example of the butterflies in your stomach, that sort of feeling, like giddiness.
Interesting. I mean, I'm not very familiar with this one.
It actually makes the comparison to a drug. I don't know.
So is it love as in like... Oh, that's hard. That one's difficult. We might have to come back to that one. Yeah, that one's really hard to put into words.
We might have to add a follow-up on the beginning of next episode.
Yeah. It isn't super crucial for the rest of our discussion, but
No.
Well, I'll have to read into that one because I'm not familiar with that. Ludus.
It actually says here, if you've been in love before, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, there you go. That's why I don't understand it.
For the... Let's just make up our own theoretical one. I'll run with the crackhead energy example.
Go with it, yeah.
I think it would differ it would be like you're with your friends or your partner, and just like the silliness, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, the word playful love, like that's why I immediately knew where you're going with that when you first thought of that, because it's like playful, and it's also love, but it's not like like a sum game kind of thing. It's entirely just a game rather.
Maybe it would be like, it could be like the ability to be completely comfortable around a person to the point where you can really be as ridiculous as you want.
That might be it. Yeah. Interesting. How would you, out of curiosity, if this one isn't crackhead energy, where would you put it in the other ones?
Where would I put crackhead energy?
I think I know where I'd put mine.
I mean, philia.
Yeah.
It would work there. I guess since we were using the term like camaraderie and stuff like that to describe philia, I guess and you were using like the military analogies, I guess I more associated that with like something else, like being part of a team or
Yeah, I'd have to look more particularly,
or having more of like a goal to accomplish that you're all working towards, or
yeah, I'd have to look at the definitions to really tell. But
even
like,
though
I wonder if it is that.
definitionally it wasn't that, I could just be making stuff up. But
welcome to our podcast where we research things and then proceed to make them up when we have the notes in front of us.
We research things, completely disregard them, and then make up our own definitions.
It's more fun that way.
But hopefully anyone that's listening can follow. As we move on to our last and most destructive form of love.
Destructive?
Yes.
Oh.
This one is called mania.
Well, that's easy.
Obsessive love.
Oh, I see this one.
And even more than Eros, I would define this as the love of high school, or high school relationships, specifically after they've ended.
Yeah. I was going to say, because this sounds more like kind of a stalker kind of thing, where it's like, I have to have that, which I guess could even apply to objects too, which is frightening to use the word object.
Addiction.
Episode 6, go watch it. But why do we do that? That's like every sentence. Yeah, that's interesting. And I like that you added the particularly after them, because it really does turn into this case of the relationship's over. And for most of these token relationships, it's like there's some bad breakup or some cheesy breakup, and then one of them cries for the rest of the year, and the other one tries to forget about it until they switch places. Right?
Yeah, that certainly happens.
At least that's my experience, is seeing people. And there's always, usually after the breakup, there's usually some form of like, I want to get back together, and more often than not they do. Just because of that.
And it's not, at this point, it's purely based on emotion.
Is it?
There's never really any thought put into, like, does me being infatuated with this person make any logical sense whatsoever? Is it good for me at all?
Right.
And I suppose an example of when people are still in a relationship could be like a controlling relationship or something like that.
Yeah.
Jealousy would even factor into it.
Yeah, like not trusting your lover to actually be not worthy. Loyal to you, and like not going against you and dating someone else or going with, an affair, that kind of thing. So that's an interesting one. Thank you for providing the other 4 that I was not familiar with.
And this one, taken to its logical extreme, when it's not in the context of high school, or even sometimes when it is in the context of high school,
that's frightening,
can result in criminal activities, namely murder and rape.
Yeah.
So,
on that light note,
avoid this one.
So I think that is a great segue to our next section.
Which can probably be avoided using introspection.
Whoa, it's almost like it's the purpose of this podcast. Whoa.
So that was a fun little rundown of those.
Yeah, I think this is, now that we kind of have this, what are the forms of love, we can talk about how you express it.
Yes.
These are what are known as the love languages.
Yes.
Which when I first heard about them in that lecture, I was like 90% confident it was going to be like, oh yes, the romance languages, Latin, German, those, right?
Yeah.
I was like, no, not at all, Andrew. Not at all. So I have the list here. If we want to go down them and again, just kind of describe and discuss them.
We shall start with the words of affirmation.
Yes.
Please define affirmation.
So affirmation, think of the word confirmation.
I was thinking of the word affirm.
Well, or to be affirmed, in that it's like someone's agreeing with you or supporting you or giving kind of like justification to you. The simplest way to think about words of affirmation is someone saying good job. But then like on a more base fundamental level, you get to the idea of like you're in a relationship and someone says, I appreciate you, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then we've talked privately about some of the nuances of it, how mm-hmm. different people have different effects on that, and their authority, if you will, changes how much they affect it on you. Yeah. This is my personal one. I am really strongly to the words of affirmation. One of the reasons I enjoy these discussions so much is because it's just awesome to talk to someone like Luke. But particularly because I get to be affirmed in a valid discussion, if you will.
It's interesting because when you explain it like that, I think I very much do fall into that, but the way our teacher described it to us, I didn't, because it almost seemed like superficial, just saying good job, I love you for no reason. Mm-hmm. Things where you don't feel like you've earned something.
Yeah, I definitely feel like words of affirmation of the five, it's the most nuanced in its definition, particularly because like to say good job repeatedly it's nice. If someone's like good job to me, unless it's someone of like authority, again, it really doesn't have a lot of effect on me.
Yeah.
But again, if that authority is there, it does have that effect, or the less they say it,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
it really affects it. In the same way that like I rarely curse, but when I do, it's a doozy. And I rarely shout, but when I do, it's a doozy. The same thing applies to positive things such as compliments. I do give compliments, but I rarely give like really
sincere.
So yeah, sincere compliments. Those are very few coming, and at least personally, I feel like when I try to deliver those, I try to convey how much more impactful they should be. And depending on the person, it may or may not come across that way if they don't believe it or not, or if they understand that and recognize it. And this one I think is really nice to recognize the importance of understanding the people around you, because then you don't only understand the way they think, but the way their values. In the same way that I value, like trying and demonstrate how much I value a sincere comment or mm-hmm. a good handshake, if you will. If you know that, you'll take it much more seriously and appreciate it on a higher level than most people will. And honestly get more out of it, mm-hmm. which is the intention.
That's interesting, because maybe it's just the negative connotation I have of this, but I almost see this as something I have to earn from whoever's giving the compliment or the affirmation. Yeah. And that I have to accomplish something or actually do a good job at something to be told that. So I would say I want to be affirmed when I deserve it.
Well, certainly.
But that almost doesn't seem to me like love. It seems more like just giving due to what someone has accomplished.
So the love languages, as they are both a way of expressing love as an idea and just a general affection and appreciation, I think is the important word there, of another person. And we talked a little bit before about how when you have someone you highly respect and are trying to get affirmation, if you will, from, when they say they're disappointed, it has a significantly more impactful effect on you, in the same way that sincere comments have a much higher impact when I try to deliver them. At least I hope they do. So I see what you mean. I don't really see it as a trying to earn it, but I do feel like I don't see it as a giving credit where credit is due, but I do feel like if I haven't earned it, I don't deserve it.
Yeah. So it's more up to the person giving this to recognize and appreciate that person, and let them know as much.
Yes, I would say.
Okay.
That one's my favorite because it's so detailed.
Mm-hmm. Now to the least detailed one.
Physical touch. This is just, hugs, kisses, intercourse. There was way too much of a pause. But this one is very straightforward. Some people find it better to have that kind of physical touch to their affection, as I grab my own hand for some reason. The only thing our teacher taught us to be wary of is if someone had some kind of abuse in their childhood, or some kind of association with that. I won't tell the stories he told because they're a little more vivid, and I think YouTube would demonetize us, even though we don't get monetized at all. But the point was, like, this person was significantly more uncomfortable with that because of what they had seen. And a much say, for example, our teacher was also a minister, and he spoke about how he'd have old ladies at funerals come up to him and just want to hug him. Now, he wasn't a hugging person. He was not a physical touch person, but yet he would do it because it was something they needed, and they weren't receiving anymore.
If their husband had died,
not many people are going to give an old lady a hug. And if think about when you're a kid, how many old ladies come up to you and start kissing you, right? No. Is that just me? Is that just me?
Do we need to have a talk?
Well, at, like, churches, No? Is that literally just me?
I think so.
All right, I'm a little uncomfortable now. Okay. That came out really weird. So just NSA, if you're listening, it's fine. It's fine.
I was going to say something, but I was so taken aback by that. Oh yeah. He also made a point to talk about the negative consequences of when you have a person where this is one of their love languages and you withhold touch, especially when you normally wouldn't. It can have a very adverse and powerful effect on them.
Interesting. More than some of the other ones, you would say?
Yeah. Mostly because it is so
physical,
ingrained in us.
Well, I would certainly say physical, while it's not probably the number one for a lot of people, or the majority of people, it's probably still, it's still very innate.
Yeah.
Because so much of human history is that is the mother's womb, and get all into all that Freud stuff. But that idea of that closeness, and I won't be graphic, but you think about mother's womb, getting milk, that kind of stuff. It's all that level of being close to someone you love and trust. Yes. Okay, number 3. We'll just skirt away from that one. Quality time.
Yes. Of course, the objective best love language. No,
the objective best?
No.
We haven't gotten to that section. Don't do foreshadowing. That's my job.
Foreshadowing. Actually, I what am I? I don't know.
What am I? Well, Luke, we can have a discussion on what you are.
Okay, quality time. It is exactly what it states.
Spending time with someone.
Time. Not actually,
Oh.
not just time.
Oh.
Quality time.
Oh, I see.
As if that helps. As if that's helpful in any way.
So, you see, quality time isn't just time, but it's quality time, right?
But it's
I love definitions.
It's time you spend engaged with the person. Like, I wouldn't describe watching a movie or with a person, at least silently, or both being on your phones in the same room or something like that. I wouldn't really describe those as quality time. I would just describe those as time spent.
Interesting. I don't know where I would fall in that discussion, but I almost would want to disagree in that I feel it might just be my experiences with seeing other people in this idea of just spending that time together. Famously, high schoolers being on like FaceTime for 13 hours, that kind of thing. It's less of like actually having a discussion and being with each other and more of just being there. And that's something I don't do and I wouldn't do. I don't like that at all. Plus my phone's battery could not handle it. But that's interesting because there's a bit of a discrepancy there between not necessarily generations but between groups of people. And it's not just a disagreement, it's a value disagreement.
Because I would say it's more about content, like in terms of what you're doing, rather than simply being there. But I could see why, because it is comforting just having people you care about around you.
Well, I ask, at what point does it become physical touch?
Yeah.
And like, not necessarily actually touching, but just the presence of them. Is that quality time, or is it physical touch in that they're there physically with you? Because that might be what it is.
Gasp, they're all interconnected.
Whoa, it's almost like love is an extremely complicated topic that the Greeks spent centuries trying to figure out and still didn't figure out.
And we're figuring it out in 45 minutes.
Well, I think we're doing a right damn good job.
What? Someone quote that.
Right Dan Goji job? That was a fantastic sentence. I'm on a roll today. Yes, our editor is currently writing it down. Yeah, you will be able to buy that on a t-shirt. That's what we're going to do. Right Dan Goji job.
Okay, moving along here.
Anytime I embarrass myself, just keep going.
Actus of service. Why did I say it like that? I don't know.
Acts of service. This is different. The next one is gifts, and it's important to discern the difference between these two, because acts of service is more in relation to activity and actually doing something physically, while a gift is a gift. It's giving someone something that is kind to them.
This would be
something, an object, really.
Doing something that otherwise a person would have to do, like cleaning something. That would be a good example.
Yeah, an act of service would be mowing the lawn for your dad before they get home, and them saying thank you for doing that because they appreciate you doing it.
Which would be words of affirmation.
Which, again, interconnected. Yeah, right back to words. Which it wasn't that you didn't need that, but it's you did it for them to try and be nice. Even something like helping someone on their homework, or just trying to be provide yourself in a way that you can be of aid to them.
So that brings up an interesting concept that I guess we could touch on more at the end, but do certain of these languages play well with each other in the way that if you got someone a gift or did an act of service and then the other person responded in kind with words of affirmation.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you give someone a gift and they say, "Oh, you're such a great person. You always know what to get me. You always know what to do to make me happy when I'm struggling," or something like that. I don't know what I'd do without you. There's gifts, words of affirmation, or quality time and physical touch. They kind of intermix when you, depending on the situation. Um, I would even classify acts of service and quality time together because I consider my time a gift. Not to say like I'm gifting you my
You
time.
just connected three.
I'm like super highbrow and like being really nice to you. But it's like
It could be if you're helping someone. It could be too if you're helping someone with something and they're also there and you're also sharing that quality time.
Right. Yeah, because if you're providing your time and not necessarily getting anything in return, or at least expecting to get anything in return, that's acts of service, I would think. Quality time. They'll probably thank you. Words of affirmation. They might buy you lunch. There's gifts. What are we missing? Physical touch. They give you a high five. There you go. All 5 of them.
That wasn't reaching at all.
That was not reaching at all. My eyebrows like twitching from that wonderful juxtaposition. That wasn't a juxtaposition, but it's fine. Just don't tell anyone. So, do you have any more on those? I was gonna kind of derail it a bit here. Just on like the individual ones. I'm gonna kind of connect them all now.
I think we got them all.
Okay, so the reason you want to know what the love languages are is so that you can learn yours and the people around you. Because if you know yours, you can help people. You can, in a selfish way, you can make relationships that are, if you will, the most beneficial to you, with the least amount of work, just by demonstrating those things, which sounds very selfish, but it's not. It's just human intuition. And then on the other hand, recognizing the love languages of your parents, your siblings, your friends, your possible intimate relationships are like, at that point you can make those more fulfilling, as opposed to just one of the definitions of love.
Yeah.
Because if you get into again, you can really see I'm really struggling here. You can hear it because it's such a complex topic.
So complicated.
It's so complicated, and we're solving it in like 50 minutes. But if you think about it, using the love languages to really demonstrate these kinds of loves with the people around you, using words of affirmation to fulfill philia, using quality time and gifts to fulfill storge, using physical touch for eros, and agape for acts of service, if you will. All of those, they're very interconnected and they all relate back to each other.
I wouldn't say you can assign love languages to the kinds of love.
No, sorry, to clarify, I'm just giving examples.
Oh, okay.
But it's how you take it. It's all entirely subjective in how you do it. And one of the questions I wrote at the bottom of this was, is there an objective love and affection?
Wow, that's a question.
Which is like 50% of human history.
Does it objectively exist?
Yes, objectively.
Whoa.
What is love, but like actually for real, an objective definition?
It depends on... I would say it depends on... Hold on.
Oh, you okay?
I was getting.
You have a thought? Okay.
Of course, that's controversial.
Oh, do we not want to do that? I have some stuff to help.
I was going to say it would probably depend on the existence of a deity. In that if it's just our brain.
I see what you mean, for like an objective,
then
physical kind of thing to exist that is
Yeah,
love, it
I would
kind
say,
of require
because
that.
I would say love isn't rational
I would agree.
in that it can't exist without having some basis outside of our mind. Because I would think those innate desires, the wanting to be rewarded, the wanting to be affirmed.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say those are really love, but that contradicts what we've said, because we just said it depends on your definition of love.
Yeah.
I would say some forms of them, yes. I would say agape could not exist for obvious
You're
reasons.
saying these and I don't actually know what they are offhand. Okay. Yeah.
For obvious reasons. I would say Eros would exist for the very reason that it is lust.
Yeah, here you get into, and I'll I cheer you for that wonderful part. That was very difficult, and you handled that very well. Thank you. But where's the affirmation? But the reason that was so difficult, and if you want to try that at home, listeners, the reason it's so difficult is it's such a complex topic, and there really isn't a good answer to it. This is the reason why the Greeks spent years on it, the Romans spent years on it. Every civilization's theologians and great thinkers have thought about it and tried to figure it out. The entire field of psychology still doesn't have a good answer, and they use brain scanning.
If it all depends on where you believe love comes from. If it's just a series of things happening in our brain that bring about those feelings, then yes, there is objective love, because for the reason that it's all there, it's all in your head, it's all self-contained. But if you define love as something beyond that, then it can't really be objective.
Yeah, because pleasure and happiness are by definition
Without
are.
it can't be objective without a deity to make it so.
Yeah, because happiness and pleasure are by definition just your synapses firing and dopamine getting through, but we don't know what causes that.
Yeah.
And realistically, we will never know. In the same way that, like, we build, to use an analogy that some of you might understand, when we build AI bots, we build AI bots that build AI bots. And there's a bunch of really great videos on this about AI learning. But for the most part, the best bots, we don't understand how they function because they just kind of are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And neither we or they or any other bot knows how they function. So it really is kind of like and our brains are the same way. It's just neurons are the same as lines of code in their function, at least. So realistically, we've gone very deep off the end here.
Whoa.
But it's like, it's interesting that you use the notion of deity to present a way that makes sense, that somehow order and function out of chaos, if you
It's
will.
the same reason I would argue, another hot take here,
Oh boy.
that you really can't have an objective morality without a deity to will it so. In that outside of what we perceive as individuals and as a society of what is moral,
Yeah.
is there something objective beyond that if you don't have a god?
Yeah, because there's thousands of books, famously, Lord of the Flies, famously, with the whole notion of like, is society the reason we have innate virtues, if you will, or is society what presses those virtues, or are they innate? And thus, is the only, to add on top of that, is the deity, the idea of a deity, what makes them innate because it's part of the society saying so? Or is it because there's a deity by itself that just wills that, if at all? It's a very, yeah, I don't, we've already gone very long today, and I have a couple things I could drop here that could lead us into another 3 hours, but we probably shouldn't do that. Not on this paper, just thoughts.
Should we follow up next week? Do you think that's what we should do?
With objective morality? Andrew's gonna have to do a lot of reading.
Oh no. We would have to take a week off for that.
We might have to. We'll see, yeah.